for tuning into Functions 101 series again, guys. This is a Zoho CRM Community Learning Series initiative. It's me, Anu again, and I'll be walking you through today's session on how to build Deluge functions from scratch. With me again, I have Sendil and Ram Prasad. In our previous sessions, we managed to cover the basics of Deluge up until list and map data types. I hope you guys found the time to check out my two previous videos where I explained the basics up until the list and map. If you haven't, don't worry. You can still find it in our community page by going into community.zoho.com and then searching for Functions101. You can also find it in the description section on our YouTube videos. So far, the response has been great, and I'm really thrilled to see a lot of questions on this subject flooding my inbox. Just a small request though, kindly share these concerns on this forum post so that our community gets a chance to show off their skills on this subject. Alrighty, last time we discussed the two main data types, which are list and map. Let's just take a quick recap. We saw that with a list, you can store values in a sequential order and pull them out based on the position that you put them in. Now, this position is called an index, if you remember, which represents the position of the element in the list. The first position is always 0. You're allowed to have duplicates within a list. Now, there are a couple of ways you can construct a list. There are two ways actually. The first way is by using a constructor. As you can see here, you would first start off with mentioning what the variable name is, and then you would put the elements of the list within double quotes because they're a string, and also enclose them within curly braces. Another way of creating a list is by initializing a list and adding values to it so that it returns a list at the end of the day. It would go something like this. In this case, panelists equals the list that we're initializing, and then you add each element to this variable panelist. Then we saw some basic manipulations and built-in functions with lists, like add, remove, clear for each element, for each index, and etc. Moving to the map, we noticed that the values are stored in a key value pair and no duplicates are allowed in terms of a key. The values in a map are pulled out with the help of these keys, unlike in the list where you pull it based on the position or the index. Again, there are two ways of creating a map. First is using a constructor, like a key value pair. We would say name, and then that is the key. You would have the value as Anu. Again, the key is company, and the value is Zoho. Another way of creating a map is by initializing a map and putting values into it. In this case, we would use the variable name .put as opposed to add in the list. We then checked out some manipulations and built-in functions around map as well, like put, as you can see here, then size, contains key, contains value, keys, and so much more. The list and map are very important data types, and a clear understanding of how they are created and manipulated is advisable before you start building functions from scratch. Now that we've quickly recalled how far we've come, let's see what's in store for today's session. But before we get to that, there's a small update in the UI, and I just quickly want to show you what that was about. Don't worry, it's the same thing, it's just that now we have more space to work with, right? I hope you've all logged into your Zoho CRM. If you have, go to your setup on the top right, go to automation, go to actions, go to custom functions, click on configure function, and write your own. So now it's the same thing. and you'll see there's this new field like function name, which does not allow you to have spaces. So Functions101, let's say, right? So it's not mandatory, so you can just leave it and choose the module that you're writing this for. I know what you're thinking. When will we start writing functions that actually matter to the business? Well, that's today. We will finally start building functions from scratch, and you will learn how to 1. Create a record in Zoho CRM, how you would pull the details of a record from a module, how would get the details of a record with the ID, how you would search a record with a criteria, how you would update a record in the Zoho CRM, and how to do these actions in bulk, like bulk create and bulk update. There are some basic syntaxes that you will need to understand, but don't worry. For the most bit, the system will prompt them on the screen, so you don't have to memorize them. All you have to do is enter the requested parameters and sort of fill in the blanks. Piece of cake, right? Before we proceed any further, you must be wondering what get record by ID is. I just want to clarify that before we proceed. Now, every record in Zoho CRM has a unique ID. It's not visible anywhere when you click on the record, like so. It's not visible anywhere here. But if you look here at the URL, you will see a bunch of numbers, and that's what an ID of this particular account is. Okay, so if you want to get the details using custom functions for this record, you can pass this number and get the details from there. So that's what an ID is. Another thing I want to clarify is the search record with a criteria. You all know what a criteria is, right? Just a filter so that you can tell the system what exactly you're searching for. Any function has these basic components. The function is a set of statements grouped together under a function name, and this can be invoked anywhere within the program, which means the functions facilitate reusability and flexibility. When you feel like repeating certain scripting functionalities across different parts of the application, you can define them under a function name and then reuse it later. Remember the one that did not allow the spaces? That's the field I'm talking about. So that's a function name. Functions also hold arguments. Now, these are values you input, basically those parameters that are a part of the code, but then their values need to be picked up from the CRM, in which case you will define them as an argument in the argument section. Okay, let me take that one by one. So setup, actions, custom functions, configure, write your own. This is the function name I was talking about. Function name, this is whatever you'd like it to be. What module is it for? And next. You see the edit arguments here? This is what I'm talking about. If you have a piece of code and you need to tell the system, you know what? The phone, what I have in my code needs to be picked up from the phone field in Zoho. So just come down here and select this. So this is what the arguments are all about. Obviously, you write custom functions to do a certain calculation or some logic. Now that part is also included. And finally, the output is captured in a variable and displayed. These are the four main components of any function. The last thing we need to keep in mind is that the Deluge code takes the API name of the field you want to work with. What is an API name, you ask? Now let's take, for example, the leads module. We know that the module name can be mentioned as leads, but how do we know for sure? Go to your setup, again, And this time, don't go to actions, scroll down. Let me just remove that to developer space, and you'll see APIs. Click on that. You'll see API names. Now, whatever you see here is how if you've renamed it, that's how you would see it here. And this is the actual API name that you can use in the custom functions. Now, an API name is a unique keyword that is used to point to a module or a field within Zoho CRM. It is even used to pull out the values that are stored in the fields. For instance, in a situation where you want to copy the mailing street address to the billing street field, it would be something like this. In the first instance, when we put them between the string within double quotes, it means we want to copy it to the billing street. In the second one, you'd see I would have highlighted the shipping street. Yeah. Now, whatever values are in shipping street, I've not put them within quotes. So whatever values are already available in shipping street within Zoho CRM is to be picked up and then put into this billing street, right? That's the last thing you need to know as far as basics are concerned. And yes, I do think we've spent a good amount of time figuring out the basics. And I know what you're thinking. Let's start building functions already, right? Don't worry, let's get to it then, okay? First thing we're going to learn is how to create a record in Zoho CRM, be it any module, what are the parameters, how to find and enter them, so on and so forth. This is a syntax. It looks a little overwhelming in my slide, but when I show it to you within the Zoho CRM, it'll be much simpler. So syntax is any variable name, or anything of your choice, equals Zoho, it's always going to be there, dot CRM, or if you're writing this function for some other product, then that product's name, dot, since you're creating the record, it's called create record. So Zoho and CRM pretty much remains the same if you're writing functions for Zoho CRM, and then you can create a record, get record, so on and so forth. Since we're starting with create record, we're going to start there. Now within the braces, you're going to mention what module it is in a string format and the map of what you're trying to create. What's the name? What's the value for the name? What's the company? What's the value for the company? And you will mention the map over there. Of course, semicolon is your best friend. Okay. Now let's see how to create a record in Zoho CRM. I'm excited already. Home page. I'll just start from there. Setup, automation, actions, custom functions, configure function, write your own. Let's create a lead. Leads module, yes. Now we want to create a lead. How would we do that? We have to mention a variable name. Let's say like add new equals Zoho dot CRM dot. That'll give you this list. Let's say create record. And which module is it? It's for the leads module. How do I know this name? Because it's the API name. And you get the API name from, yes, developer space, APIs, API name. Just copy paste it from here if you're not too sure. And then we're looking for the map, which we don't have yet. So let's initialize the map. Let's just say new map equals map, right? New map dot put the name. Okay. So far, because we didn't work with Zoho CRM in particular, we didn't have to take care of the API names as much. But now, since we have to work with Zoho CRM, we need to see what are the mandatory fields that are required to create a lead. Okay, let's see. Let's just try to create a lead. Okay, company is mandatory, last name is mandatory. All right, nothing else. Cool. Now, what are the API names for company and last name? Setup, APIs, API name, click on leads, and company is just company. Last name is last underscore name. Okay, pick that up, put that here. We also need company, which is just company. And I want to say Zoho. Okay, now we have a map, so we can put that here. Do you want to see? Save and execute. Oops, what did I forget? Aha, semicolon. Ta-da! You want to see the new lead that I created? Let's just go to today's leads. Today's leads. And there we go, Zoho Community. And that's how you create a lead. Simple, right? You start off with the syntax and then basically add whatever you've missed out. Now, in this case, we didn't have a map, so we just went up and created the map and then added that variable over here. Pretty simple. There we go. The next thing you're about to learn is how to fetch or get record details from a certain module, right? This is the syntax. Again, variable name equals zoho.crm dot, and then now you're trying to get the record. So instead of create record, you'll mention get record, and then you'll mention the module within quotes, and then of course the semicolon. Let's check that out. Out here I have an example. I said get lead equals zoho.crm dot get record, and then I put leads module, right? Let's try for the accounts module. Now, get accounts equals zoho.crm dot get records, and then accounts. Let's try to save and execute. Okay. Why does it only say that and not give me details? Because I didn't put the debugger statement. Get accounts. Now we have a debugger. All right, so basically we have all the accounts that I have in my Zoho CRM. Yeah, so that's how you get or fetch records in Zoho. Now, what if you need to get a record or get details of only a particular record? Now, that's when get record by ID comes into picture. Now, this is a syntax. You'll put the variable name again equals zoho.crm dot. This time you'll say get record by ID, mention the module and the record ID. Remember the record ID found in the URL? Okay. You know what? Let's just take the one lead that we created in the start of this session. So this is the ID of that lead, right? Let's try to get the details of this. So get lead details of zoho.crm dot get record by ID. It's from the leads module. And this is my ID. Now info to see what it is. And there we go. There we go. It says Anu, company Zoho. Very much gives you everything that you're looking for. So it'll give you the details of that particular record. All right, guys, let's take 5. And when we come back, we'll learn how to search a record, how to update a certain record, and how to do the bulk actions like create and update. Let's move on to the next segment, shall we? We will now learn how to search for a record with a certain criteria. The syntax goes like variable name equals, and you know the drill, zoho.crm dot search records. Within the parameters, you will mention the module name as well as the criteria that you're searching for. Now, the syntax for the criteria itself goes like you will mention the field API name, an operator, and what value you're searching for. Now, when I say operator, I mean you can mention starts with or equals. For better understanding, let me explain this with an example. Suppose I'm searching for leads where the email starts with A. Now, if I'm looking for something like this, I would say variable name equals, in this case, response equals Zoho CRM search records. I'm looking at the leads module and I'm looking for the leads where the email starts with A. So you'll mention email, which is the API name of the email field, colon. You can either use starts with or equals. So we have starts underscore with, again a colon, and then you say A and put an asterisk to say the starts with what, right? And then you enclose all of that within a braces and double quotes. Let's see how this works. I will explain both equals as well as starts with, okay? All right, now let's take a lead. And in the lead, I have the email address as abc@xyz.com. And suppose I want to search for this particular lead, and the criteria is that the email equals abc@xyz.com. Let's see how to fetch that in the functions. Say get my lead equals zoho.crm.search records. I'm looking at the leads module, and my criteria starts with two braces, enclose them in double quotes, and say email, which is the API name of the email field, equals, actually, don't leave the space there, and say abc@xyz.com. Info, get my lead. And we have, perfect. So these are the details of that particular lead. Now suppose we want to go for starts with, right? Let's say email starts underscore with, say A. Save and execute. There you go. You can add the asterisks to avoid ambiguity. It'll give you the same result. Okay, so we've now learned how to search for a record with a certain criteria. This will come into picture when you want to search for something, get that record, and then do some action on it, right? So we've searched for the record. Next thing you want to learn is how to update a record. Now, the syntax for updating a record goes like variable name equals zoho.crm.update record, and you'll mention the module name, the record ID of the record that you're trying to update, and the value that you're updating it with. Okay, now let's check out an example. Now, in this case, the record value is a map, right? As you can see here. So I would have to first initialize a map and then put in the record ID there. So if I want to update this record that says abc@xyz, maybe I want to change the email address to xyz@abc, right? Let me just save this here. Let's say update my lead equals zoho.crm.update record. I'm looking for the leads module. They want an ID. This is my ID, right? ID. They're looking for a map, which I don't have yet. So let me update that. Mapping equals map. Now mapping dot put email as xyz@abc.com. Now I have that map. I'll say info, update my lead, save and execute. Oops, semicolon. There we go. It's been modified. Let's check out the lead. There we go. You can check it out here for more accurate data. It's been updated. So this is how you would update a lead. Now again, you know that you can pass the record ID in the arguments by saying input dot lead ID dot too long, because you want to convert that to a long number. Take that lead ID and tell the system, you know what, this lead ID is actually this lead ID, and save it. That way the system will prompt you and you can put that value there. You'll get the same thing. But if you want to automate this, you just have to save it and associate it to a workflow, and it'll do it based on the criteria that you put in the workflow. Okay, so we've learned how to update a record as well. What else do we have? This is the other example I was talking about, where you want to input the ID or have the system take the ID from the CRM itself. So input dot lead ID dot too long, and then the arguments you would map this, right? Cool. Now moving to bulk actions, we are going to learn how to bulk create records as well as bulk update records. The syntax goes like this. And in the bulk actions, we would be using both list and map. I'll explain why and how. So the syntax is like variable equals zoho.crm.bulk create, the module name and the map of the record values. Okay. For example, we are trying to create two leads. Okay. Let's just say Thomas and Jeffrey from the company Zoho. Okay. Now I'll have to initiate two different maps and create these leads. So let's start with lead one. I'll say map one is Thomas, put last underscore name, small n, is Thomas. We can make sure this is correct by just going into the API section. And then I'd say map one dot put company is Zucker. Now lead two, map two equals another map two dot put last underscore name, which is from here leads last underscore, capital N, okay. Capital N. All right. So we change that to Jeffrey. Then map to dot put companies, again, they're from the same company, your colleagues. And then that's it. So we've created the two leads, or we've pretty much created the maps for the two leads. Now we know the syntax for bulk create is like zoho.crm.bulk create the module, and they're looking for a list. Okay, so I want this in the leads module. Now I'm only allowed to pass one parameter here. So what I'll do is I'll create a new list. Okay, and I'll add these maps to that list. Map one, map two, and new list. Info to bulk create. Let's see here. All right, it's been executed successfully. Let's go check out the leads module for today's leads. And voila. So we have created 2 leads in bulk, right? Now I've only put last name and company because in my leads module, only those are my mandatory fields. I don't have any other mandatory fields. But if you do have any more, you're required to add them into the map. Okay? Alrighty, so we've learned how to bulk create. The last syntax we're going to learn for today's session is how to bulk update records in a certain module. Syntax goes like variable equals Zoho.crm bulk update. But in this case, if you remember normal updates, we are required to pass a record ID, right? So I will quickly take you to an example. The syntax looks the same, but when you try to write the code, where you pass the ID and how you pass it will make more sense with the example. So I'll just take you right here. Now we are trying to bulk update. Let's say it's exactly these 2 leads itself, right? Jeffrey and Thomas we just created. So the map for Thomas is like map1 equals, this time let me just create it in the other way. ID for map1 for Thomas is this. Okay, then also within quotes. And I want to say email is thomas@zilker.com. Okay. And then map for Jeffrey, let's say map2 equals curly braces, say ID. Let's see what's Jeffrey's ID. Pick that up, put that in there, and say his email address is jeffrey@zoho.com. Now we add both to a list, a single list, to be precise. So final list again equals just a list. Final list dot add map1 final list dot add map2, and of course our syntax, let's just say lead info equals zoho.crm bulk update. Module is leads, and the list is final list info lead info, right? Save and execute. Perfect. So let's go check that out. Go back, and voila. I think we've learned enough syntaxes for today. Let's take a break and quickly move into some examples that makes more sense to your business. Now, suppose you had a spreadsheet and all of the phone or the mobile numbers is in the phone field, and when you imported them, you accidentally put all of the values in the phone field, and you want to push all of that into the mobile field now, okay? So if I were to write a function from scratch for something like that, I would say, let's say new map equals map, and say new map dot put. Now, remember the API names, if you put them between double quotes, it means you're trying to copy it into that field, and if you put them exactly as it is without the quotes, it means you're picking up values from the field. Now, again, let's check if the API names are right. Setup, developer space, APIs, API names, leads. I'm looking for phone. All right. So phone is phone, mobile is mobile with a M. So, yep, capital P. Now, simple. Update equals Zoho CRM update record leads. Now, either you can enter it here, like the number itself, the lead ID itself, or you can do this lead ID dot too long and finally give this new map there. Info update. Pretty simple, huh? Now you say save. Ooh, I did not define it. So I need to tell the system what this stands for. So again, edit arguments, put that in there and say pick this up from the phone field. Perfect. Now I save it. Lead ID is also not defined, which is right. So add another one, say this is this. Cool. Now save. Good. So now I have saved the function. I need to automate this process, right? So that's where the rules come into play. I'll say I'll create a new rule for the leads module and say copy from phone field to mobile field. Whenever I edit something, next, for all the leads, I want to work with this function. So I'd say associate, and I would save it, and this would do it automatically. So let me go in here and quickly edit this and put in a phone number, save. What happens is it gets copied to the mobile as well. If you check the timeline, you'll see that the function has been initiated. So yeah, that's pretty simple, right? Similarly, you can copy the email address from here to the secondary email address if you made a mistake with that. So that's the second example we're going to try out. How to copy the values in the email field to the secondary email field. Again, setup. Go back to the function that we were working on. This time, you just have to make small changes, right? This would be what? Secondary email. Okay, I don't know the API name. All right. Just copy paste that then. And this should be email. Yeah, it's pretty obvious, but just to make sure. And then all of this remains the same. And the edit arguments, I would say email is from email. Everything else remains the same. And the last example we're about to see is how to update the phone numbers based on the country codes. Now, if it's a US, let's add a 1, that sort of a thing, right? So if you remember the first webinar, some telephony systems do require the phone numbers with the country codes for it to call out of the system. So this is why you would use the function to bulk update all of them, right? Now let's see an example here, or how you would write that. Just say mp equals map. We're initializing the map. mp.put. In the phone fields, you need to add a +1, right? So 1 plus just the operator. And then input the phone, right? This is the API name of the phone, and I'm copying it to the phone field also. Now update equals Zoho CRM not upsert, update. And I would say leads module I would say input dot lead ID dot too long to make it a float, and the map is the MP that we just initialized. Info update, right? If I say edit arguments, I'll need to mention that phone is phone, lead ID as it is, save, and save. I would then have to create a rule on the leads module that updates phone number with country code. Now you can say whenever you edit this, for when the country is USA. Next, you can associate this function, associate, and save. Works, go to the leads module. Now I said only when the country is USA. Let me just add that in here, USA. And this is my phone number field. Oh, let me not add the one there, so save. And the system automatically adds the one, right? You can see that there. So that's how you bulk update all of them, or bulk update the phone numbers with a +1 using custom functions, okay? Although there are endless possibilities with functions, there are some limitations to custom functions. Like we're not able to update formula fields, auto number fields, read-only fields. If you don't have permission, that is, it becomes a read-only field. Then you're not able to hide or show any field values. You cannot update the territory fields, and you cannot update the records during an import. You can trigger it after it's been imported completely, but you cannot trigger it during an import. And there are a couple more things too. I will send it to you all at the end of today's session. I will see you next on the 5th of September. Thank you so much for your time, and you have a good one.